Okay, it looks like we can get started. Thank you everyone for joining our webinar on emerging trends. 2020 has been quite the year, and we've seen so much change in terms of the shopper data we're looking at, both in how consumers are shopping, their consumer habits, but also in that the pandemic has really brought health front of mind for all of us, I think, and that's really reflected in emerging trends that we're seeing as we look forward to 2021. I'm Shonbelle McDermott, and I'm on the retail team here at SPINS, working with our retail partners to really find them the best data to power their innovation and their business. And also joining me today is Jake Knepper.
Hey, I'm Jake Knepper. I work within the product intelligence team here at SPINS as a product manager. I've been with SPINS for about 12 plus years now. Wore a few different hats over that time, but mostly in the realm of attribute development and operations.
Thanks, Jake. We are both really excited to share data with you on emerging trends and innovative ingredients in today's marketplace, especially as we head into the new year. In terms of our content today, I'm going to kick it off with a grounding in the data we used for our analysis, and then a top-line view of what's driving growth, before Jake dives into 3 trends we really want to cover today: superfoods, heritage ingredients, and sugar scrutiny. We'll make sure to share some actionable insights and how you can bring those trends into your business, and also just how to consider them as you head into the new year. We have about 30 minutes of content, but we would love to hear from you throughout this presentation, and we'll make sure to hold time at the end for questions. So feel free to use the chat functionality at the bottom of your screen to send in any questions if something piques your interest as we're going through. Great. So starting with an overview of the data you're going to see today, so you have a sense of what you're looking at, SPINS has the privilege of working with a lot of really innovative independent retailers in both the natural wellness space and in the regional grocery conventional space. And what that data gives us is full market visibility that gives us the unique ability to spot emerging trends as soon as they start to resonate with our customers. It also enables us to see which products have high growth potential. So really helping us to understand which diets and products have longevity opportunity and really are going to resonate, and which might just be a fad. And that data is what we really want to bring quintessential work from home situation. And I appreciate you bearing with us. As I was saying, we're really excited to share with you this innovative lens on data that we have. And what we started with in terms of our analysis today is looking at both our natural specialty data and that regional grocery data that I mentioned, and looking to understand within that lens whether the iconic wellness trends that we all know and love continue to grow. And I'm smiling because what we found and what you see on this slide is that those trends do continue to grow over time. And we're seeing that they continue to be bolstered by the emerging trends that we see and we're going to talk about today as consumers become a little bit more nuanced and more educated in how they think about their products. So moving into a little bit of a view of the market, and I'm going to look first at the center of this slide. We see that those naturally positioned products really continue to drive growth in the marketplace. When we look across conventional and specialty natural, they account for almost 52% of the growth, looking at year-over-year trends. They also, if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, account for a lot of the new products coming into the space. So a lot of the kind of innovation engine of the industry is coming from that natural space. What we're also so excited about to get into today is how the emerging trends like grain-free, for example, on the left-hand side of the screen, you see that it accounts for about 40% of growth year over year, are really bolstering and supporting the iconic wellness trends like gluten-free. So pulling through for you today how you can take a maybe macro trend or insight like the continued growth of gluten-free, understand, kind of at the micro level that grain-free is bolstering that, and then really taking it through to how can you use that to make actionable decisions in your assortment and in your business. And that's what Jake is really going to take us through today. Like I mentioned, if any of these insights really resonate with you, you can always reach out to me directly. I'm happy to set you up with kind of a custom view of the data for your business.
All right, so on the agenda today are just a few trends and insights that don't necessarily get a whole lot of attention. They're a bit under the radar, but still, we feel that they're very important elements to shoppers, shopper motivations, and as purchase drivers. So we're going to take a deeper dive, leveraging Spin's product intelligence attributes to help surface these product elements and provide a few interesting insights and alternative takes on these subjects as we go along. And through this, hopefully, we bring you something new so that you'll be able to walk away from this with a few actionable insights after we've wrapped up. All right, so on this next slide, first up here we have is superfoods. Now, superfoods is a highly subjective term. Everyone thinks of it a bit differently, but for the purpose of today's insights, we're going to surface this concept of superfood by leveraging a product intelligence attribute called ingredient superfoods. So that attribute evaluates the ingredient statement and captures products containing superfood ingredients, like things like functional mushrooms, chia, or maca, or moringa. But do note that the attribute, it's not intended to capture common or everyday types of foods like blueberry or sweet potato. So kind of in other words, it captures food ingredients typically added to products to more overtly appeal to health conscious consumers looking for maybe some type of uncommon health or wellness benefit. These ingredients tend to enhance the wellness perception of the product. So superfoods have been a driving growth in innovation for years, leveraged as a key point of differentiation within a wide range of food and bev categories. And also it's been a way to help brands kind of place that health and wellness halo on their products and communicate to shoppers this perception of additional wellness benefits. And for years, shoppers, they've responded through a combination of deep loyalty and through more trial or discovery purchases, a food purchase as a fleeting mode of exploration and adventure, if you will. And both of those elements, they contribute to a steady and healthy growth curve for superfoods heading into this year. And then we kind of had 2020 with the onset of a pandemic. And with that onset of a pandemic, shopper engagement from a health and wellness perspective became a huge and vital component of innovation and brand strategy, and often exemplified by the type of ingredients captured within our superfood attribute. So at the end of the day, what we have is a segment, superfoods, with a bigger, more diverse, more attentive, kind of more motivated group of shoppers than ever before. And it's important for us to understand what's going on here, what ingredients are driving growth or interest, and where this innovation is happening. And as we can see, based on the chart on the right there, we're seeing some fairly decent disruption really in anything related to coffee, from RTD coffee, coffee beans, to both refrigerated and shelf-stable creams and creamers. It's kind of like cementing our favorite morning beverage, as not just a caffeine boost, but a potential powerhouse of nutritive and wellness benefits provided by those superfoods. Okay, and on this next slide, so what we've been seeing on the market these days, and what group of ingredients is hot right now and driving chunks of growth within the superfood segment. So let's focus on one of the hottest superfoods on the market today, functional mushrooms. So as adaptogens begin to mainstream, mushrooms are taking center stage and they're poised for continued growth. But their usage goes beyond that. Things like maitake, it's been associated with blood sugar and high blood pressure benefits. It's making incredible gains, while other mushrooms like lion's mane and turkey tail are surfacing in a diverse range of categories as well. So functional mushrooms, like we just mentioned, they jump to prominence as a key part of the adaptogenic movement, centered around physical and mental health stress management. That said, shoppers were quick to pick up on the more holistic benefits of mushrooms, including immunity. So by the time COVID hit, mushrooms were already on this steep upward trajectory in both food and beverage, as well as in supplements. And if you combine that steep upward trajectory with a boom immunity and holistic wellness market, again, thanks to COVID, mushrooms they're being catapulted into the spotlight and likely are seeing accelerated growth patterns and product innovation than what we may have otherwise seen without that market accelerator. And on this next slide, we just want to take a look at a couple of different cross sections of innovation for functional mushrooms in both supplements and food and beverage. So over in supplements, leveraging our health focus attribute to assess the primary need states shoppers are turning to functional mushrooms for. Using that attribute, you're able to see immune health leading the way, followed closely by need states like energy, cognitive, and mood, which were some of the early adaptogenic aligned need states we typically saw leading the pack pre-2020, before immunity rose to the top. So as brands in this market shift gears and innovate, kind of reacting to these new shopper need states, it will be interesting to watch how these numbers shift. Will immune pull away and create more separation? Will respiratory health gain even more traction and kind of get into the top half here? Or will this market just normalize and energy, cognitive, mood kind of rise back to that leading position? So as a secondary component here, just is kind of just understanding why shoppers purchase functional mushrooms and supplements. And understanding that could prove quite handy when assessing opportunities in food bev, for products featuring functional mushrooms. And kind of speaking of food bev, the right half of this slide is all about showing what categories are featuring new and innovative functional mushroom products. We're seeing them make their first appearance over the past 52 weeks in creams and creamers, as well as in shelf-stable desserts and hot cereals. We're also seeing new products in tremendous growth in drink mixes. There's RTD coffee again, cold cereals and frozen desserts. So if you're looking for new and innovative products, that are differentiated from competitors, yet operating in one of the hottest superfood segments on the market, these are definitely some categories to explore. And on the next slide, another way to look at how shoppers are consuming superfoods is through kind of leveraging this idea of eating occasion. So through this perspective, we're able to more broadly highlight new pockets of growth or opportunity from a product assortment perspective. So with this data, we're able to see that shoppers are incorporating superfoods, really at all eating occasions, but snacks, the most mature from a sales volume perspective is stagnating. Shoppers are discovering differentiation and choosing superfood laden meals, breakfast, desserts with more enthusiasm and intensity than they are snacks these days.
I think one thing to build on that, Jake, that stands out here, we've talked about the trend that, with COVID, people are really starting to get a little bit more adventurous in the foods they're interested in trying. We're all trying to, maybe bring a little bit more excitement. We're maybe bored of the 5 meals that we know how to cook. We've been work from home for quite some time, and that's really reflected in this data. Maybe someone trying a smoothie bowl for breakfast that has some superfoods, boosts their immunity, health is front of mind, as opposed to, the same yogurt they've tried for a continued period of time.
Yeah. And, especially for categories not exactly known for nutritious or kind of these elevated ingredient profiles, it provides for a great opportunity brand-wise and a key to differentiate as a retailer that stresses better for you options as well. Okay, and over on the next couple of slides, we're taking a look, through a variety of SPIN's attribution and insight capabilities at time-honored heritage ingredients. So it's a trend concept that has always seemed to exist in one way or another, but it continues to surface in new ways, kind of reinvent itself. And, it just always seems to be morphing, thus fueling innovation and piquing shopper interest in new and exciting ways. So by time-honored heritage, what we're looking at are ingredients or foods that kind of have either faded with time or have been confined regionally, but they're now emerging with today's natural and health and wellness shopper. So to put it into a different way, those ingredients or foods carry a certain aura with shoppers. It's about coming across something that was once lost but now found, something hard to come by but is now accessible and right in front of you. So those are the kind of ingredients and foods that they have a story, a mystique that can really draw in and just innately appeal to a shopper's need for discovery. So with this trend concept on the next slide, we're able to identify and really home in on how this trend delivers certain critical shopper needs through 3 different themes. Aspects like ancient grains and grass-fed meat or dairy, continue to perform well, representing the concept of traditional methods or sources, or in other words, just this original state, maybe a more natural construct as compared to the modern, more complicated or adulterated forms. Second, we have ways of eating concepts like paleo and Whole30 that shun refined ingredients, artificial ingredients, while promoting truer whole food-based diets rich in protein, fiber, and complex carbohydrates. Turning away from the modernization of conventional packaged goods and demanding something more holistic and real. And then our group of functional forward remedy-like ingredients that kind of in a way are really about relying on these ancient time-tested components of wellness and well-being. The ingredients known through time for revitalization and for healing from more pure or natural sources. An example is like an ingredient like hops, which are poised for a resurgence as terpenes work their way back into the wellness lexicon thanks to their association with the endocannabinoid system. And here, under remedy, like it's here obviously that you're going to see how this crosses over with superfoods in a way. So in today's quickly evolving marketplace, these are the types of ingredients brands are innovating with. It's how they're engaging with shoppers, piquing their interest and getting them to engage more meaningful product trial and discovery. Shoppers place a premium on these ingredients and continue to show a willingness to engage so long as innovation keeps pace and that sense of discovery can be reinvented and reinforced. It's all about the right product, the right innovation at the right time. And with our attribution, we're able to identify and track some of these ingredients that embody this trend concept. And to kind of build off of that theme, of innovation and timing or product life cycle, what we have on this next slide kind of shows a maturation stage that we often see with heritage ingredients. So this market evolution of time-honored heritage ingredients begins with the pure trial and discovery phase. Brands leverage the heritage concepts that we discussed earlier to draw shoppers in, to create differentiation. They're new, they're intriguing, they're often something many shoppers have never seen on the shelf, but also translates back to a core functional need like wellness or less processed, and that can translate into a purchase. So take kelp kind of as an example here. Kelp, it won shoppers over with its nutrition profile. It's wonderfully rich in healthy fats, fiber, protein, an assortment of key minerals, as well as its ability to be used as an alternative ingredient. We see it surfacing in categories ranging from noodles to plant-based jerky. And it rode a number of key diet trends, plant-based, lower carb, to a surprising level of success. So on top of it, a number of new kelp and seaweed brands are promoting their products as being sourced using regenerative ag practices, which really may help them fold in sustainability seekers as well. If kelp can maintain innovation and disrupt additional categories, growth rates could continue to rise because of how many shopper need states that it covers. So from there,
Jake, kind of building on that, I really like what you just said about how it's the diet alignment that drives product discovery for a lot of these areas and these kind of innovative ingredients. And that's absolutely what we see on the retailer side, that calling out the diet alignment for new products or emerging trends you're bringing in store really drives adoption, especially in the new world of omnichannel where e-commerce is so prevalent. If you have filters on site and someone can filter to keto products, basket size goes up, conversion goes up because they're discovering new products aligned with that diet that are exciting and they want to try and they're very open to that discovery.
Absolutely. The more shoppers that you can bring, the more success you're going to have with it. So from there, we head over to Surface, which, are comprised of those ingredients and products, that stood out during the trial and discovery phase, kind of turned into repeat and loyalty purchases. And they find themselves in a stage of proliferation, going through a stage of expanded innovation and thus broader marketplace adoption. And then on the far left side, we have heritage ingredients that have become more mainstreamed, thus maybe less differentiated for both brands and retailers alike. Here, if they continue to be successful in the surface stage, they're settling in as a pantry staple or a go-to alternative ingredient that shoppers, of all types expect to see on the shelf. Some may continue to see decent growth rates as mainstreaming chugs along, but others may experience declining growth rates at a certain point within this stage as new barriers begin to stack up, like a new emerging ingredient intent on maybe stealing a portion of its market share, maybe a lack of continued innovation within its core competitive categories, or just maybe just a price point that prevents a high degree of mainstream adoption after most shoppers have kind of closed their trial and discovery phase on the ingredient. And a bit of a sidebar here, you'll see hemp seed under established on this stage, and while stagnant or in a slight decline right now after a few years of struggling, we've been seeing this resurgence of large conventional CPG brands, leveraging hemp seed and better for you product formulations, as well as a new wave of NPI brands kind of doing the same. So because of that, we wouldn't be surprised to look at this data in 3 months and see hemp seed products showing healthy growth numbers, but time will tell. All right, and here on this next slide, we'll just touch base on the remedies bucket of time-honored heritage quickly. Here, we're leveraging the wellness tea subcategory to help provide some insight or window into shopper wants or needs, like what they're demanding, what might be driving purchase behavior into heritage remedy ingredients in food and beverage. So we're kind of using this subcategory as a barometer just for potential opportunity or white space in other food and bev categories. So with this data set, we're able to see that shoppers are showing increased demand in immune support formulations, as well as cognitive energy, digestive, stress and relaxation, amongst a few others. So by cross-referencing these product types with our primary functional ingredient attribute, we can then see products, featuring heritage remedy ingredients like rhodiola and ashwagandha, those key adaptogens. They're driving a lot of growth, primarily in stress and relaxation, but also helping to drive growth in immunity formulations as well. And on to sugar scrutiny. So with this slide, we just want to stress the importance of shopper diet or ways of eating trends that are shaping an anti-sugar market. So as consumers latched on to diets like Whole30, keto, paleo, those that kind of have emphasized lower carbs, less sugar, no refined sugar, et cetera, it's kind of like a blueprint for category disruption emerged across food and bev. Primarily it was dump the sugar. But it also involved, swapping grain and dairy carbs for lower carb substitutes, and sometimes, adding back elements like healthy fats or superfoods to create a more tailored product. So on the next slide, some of the more intriguing areas where we saw sugar dumping early on included places like condiments, dressings, marinades, as well as in jerky and even bacon. A key aspect of those early categories is that they are vital to the keto diet, but also highly relevant to Whole30 as well. Low carb, on-the-go snack and jerky, high fat, mealtime protein and bacon. And then of course, condiments and dressings being that vital component to meal prep and adding flavor and variety to these more restrictive diets. So the chart on this slide is leveraging the diet keto diet attribute, which is a net carb assessment across the entire landscape of food bev. So anything that surfaces via this attribute as keto has been determined to contain 6 grams of net carbs or less, which is calculated from the nutrition fact panel. So on this chart, we pulled in categories that have a high prevalence of both starch and sugar. So not only are these categories traditionally being avoided by those on low carb diets, they tend to be avoided by those seeking less sugar as well. So with this data set, we can see the effects of shoppers demanding better for you options in these kind of double whammy like categories. We can see where innovation is occurring and where new opportunities to just differentiate a shelf from the competition can be had. So as an example, it's no secret that wellness bars have struggled, as folks stayed at home and convenience options and on-the-go options began to decline. But check out those with low carb, low sugar. They're up 33% compared to other products, which are down 14%. So even within a struggling category, we're able to see pockets of growth and opportunity, leveraging shopper-centric attributes like diet, keto diet. And to that, a quick interesting area of growth is artisanal keto. where we're beginning to see these handcrafted, artisanal, regional brands kind of begin catering to the low carb, low sugar market. And a few brands emerging here, are centered around fresh baked goods and desserts. It's kind of like indulgent craft keto, if you will. All right, on the next slide, we're taking a peek at the use of some natural, low, no calorie sweetener alternatives across food and bev. So from a foundational perspective, we're seeing a lot of industry forces come together to help drive the use of these sweeteners, as well as drive their performance across the food and bev spectrum. Everything from revamped nutrition fact panels that outline added sugar content. There's a lot more research highlighting the importance of a low sugar diet, as well as the role sugar plays in adverse health effects. And those things, both of what I just mentioned, they help reinforce the low sugar diet trend with shoppers, but also help perpetuate this sense of mass aversion by shoppers to high sugar products. So across food and bev, we're starting to see monk fruit formulations take center stage, both volume and growth wise. And, monk fruit, is just kind of looking like the preferred choice now, especially with popular, newer, more innovative products. So if you take a look at, some of the top growth categories of all three, it's interesting to see breakfast-like categories driving some of the newer growth. Nut and seed butters over in monk fruit, coffees and sugar alcohols, and then there's jams and jellies over in stevia. Nut and seed butter, it's been a key stomping ground for a number of new innovative keto products, just thanks to that inherent fat content found there. And it's interesting to see nut butter's counterpart, jams and jellies, kind of surfacing on this list of categories. Somebody obviously noticed a white space opportunity as far as natural, low sugar options in jams and jellies go. So it's looking like, the breakfast eating occasion products are continuing to be impacted by the low sugar makeover here.
This is a great case study, Jake, too, on the retail side. We talk about emerging trends as we head into 2021. When you're thinking about category resets, what do you want to make space for? What do you want to pay attention to? And what we have is emerging trends like sugar scrutiny that are overlapping with new eating behaviors driven by COVID. So more people eating breakfast at home. What's unique about that is we're seeing trends, products, and subcategories emerge that you need to pay attention to that weren't really trending a year ago. So it's a very different market in some ways, but the trends are consistent as consumers become more and more health aware, like you mentioned. Very interesting.
Absolutely. All right, so on this next slide, we're looking at how no sugar ingredient profiles are affecting food and bev, kind of by exposing its impact in a sampling of different categories. So just kind of like an FYI here, by no sugar ingredients, we mean that the product is free from caloric sweetener ingredients like cane sugar, honey, brown rice syrup, things like fruit juice concentrates, etc. So these no sugar ingredient products being measured here may be totally unsweetened, but also may contain low, no calorie sweetener alternatives like monk fruit, erythritol, stevia, or even something like whole fruits. So in other words, no sugar ingredient products, this attribute, it represents a differentiated sweetener profile that depicts shopper transition to an ingredient profile absent of refined sugars and typical caloric sweetener ingredients. It's a way to help surface innovative products and how that innovation is impacting a given category. So how do we kind of translate this? So over in ice cream, this speaks to continued consumer demand for ultra healthy indulgence through very low sugar amounts. It also translates as clean whole food based ingredient profiles, where brands are leveraging whole fruits like strawberries, dates, blueberries as the sole source of sweetness. And just a quick note on this slide, you see some product examples here. Do note that both of those examples, within each group represent something surfaced as no sugar ingredients. So added sugars and these high levels of refined sugar content in yogurt may have stymied growth, especially in today's market. But we're seeing a shift, this emerging market of brands saying no to traditional added sugars and relying solely on whole fruits or kind of natural alternative sweeteners like monk fruit and stevia. A few brands really had success with this, and we're seeing some new intriguing brands emerging here as well. Now those numbers you see, 3% versus 9%, they actually include unflavored yogurt, which is traditionally unsweetened. So if you were to go in using our attribution and filter on flavored yogurts only, you'd see a larger percentage point difference in favor of no sugar ingredients. And then, of course, condiments like ketchup and barbecue sauce, we have no sugar ingredient products far outpacing their counterparts growth-wise. So while there are a number of brands, leveraging those natural low no-calorie sweetener alternatives, it's good to point out brands who are leveraging whole fruit components like dates and tamarind, in addition to sweeteners like monk fruit, in order to meet shopper demand for that new elevated ingredient profile that's absent of refined sugars or typical sweetener ingredients. And that's kind of it here. It's not necessarily about the absence of every last sugar molecule altogether. It's more about less sugar, no refined sugars, whole ingredient profiles, and better for you clean label perceptions via the absence of those caloric sugar ingredients that we see in typical or iconic product formulations. All right, on this next slide, we're sort of looking at the same thing as we were previously, but now just kind of homing in on the beverage market. So we've established the fact that brands are cutting or lowering sugar carb counts by leveraging monk fruit, stevia, et cetera. And again, in beverage, we see monk fruit formulations leading the way growth-wise, but not necessarily as the only natural low-calorie sweetener alternative. Monk fruit combinations are actually outperforming monk fruit alone, which may speak to market adoption or just preference of a sweetener combination, maybe from a taste perspective. And something else to note here is that, we've seen some signs of kombucha beginning to struggle or beginning to become stagnant growth-wise. And we can't help but at least suspect that the medium to high sugar content in many kombuchas could be part of that stagnation. Anyone looking to cut sugar carbs from their diet, and that's a big chunk of shoppers these days, they aren't going to simply give any product a pass just because of its other perceived health benefits. So the fact that kombucha struggles are happening at the peak of an anti-sugar market is a bit much to ignore. So we really wouldn't be surprised to see very low or no sugar kombucha, per the nutrition fact panel, as likely the next disruptive innovation to happen in a category that has really so far seemed to rely on things like unique flavors, maybe a local brand assortment, or functional ingredients like adaptogens to create differentiation. But those elements that have been relied on alone, they probably aren't going to bring in new shoppers or bring back old ones. A foundational nutrition concern being corrected, though, that is likely to provide far more impact for this market, and again, simply put more feet back into that aisle. All right. And with that, I will hand it back over to Sean Bell, who will wrap things up for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. So to summarize what we talked about today, really seeing consumers across the board have health front of mind. Definitely, influenced by the pandemic, but also I think we're eating more at home, we're spending more time at home. So as you think about applying emerging trends, it's really critical to have that data-driven process. And we hope this was helpful in kind of bringing to you some of the trends we're seeing that will really drive purchasing behavior in 2021, whether you're a brand or a retailer, leveraging this data to understand what to invest in terms of your business in 2021, whether it's private label investment, optimizing your assortment, or choosing kind of how to differentiate within your category. Like I mentioned, we would love to share more custom data with you. So if you're interested in anything we talked about today, learning more about specifically how that trend resonates with your business, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll have recordings of this available on our site and on social as well. So here's our contact information. Like I mentioned, don't hesitate to reach out. And Jake, just before we wrap up, I think we had at least one question come through on if you are more of a conventionally positioned retailer, how to bring emerging trends into your assortment. So if you're not someone who's on the bleeding edge of innovation, how to think about some of these more emerging trends.
Well, if not a super innovative retailer, I would think back to that heritage ingredient slide that, something resembling product or ingredient life cycle. You know, again, it's all about the right innovation at the right place at the right time. And so, and so by leveraging Spin's data just to understand, you know, current impact volume-wise, you know, current growth rates in a certain channel, in a certain category, you'd likely have a better understanding of when to hit the green button on an innovative product that, you know, shoppers in your store will actually pick up, you know, just to find that sweet spot, if you will.
Awesome. I think that's all we have for today. So thank you again all for joining, and thank you for bearing with us with my technical difficulties. Please reach out if you have any additional questions.